Ever feel that knot in your stomach? The endless loop of what-ifs playing in your mind? That suffocating weight of worries about the future, the past, or even just getting through today? You're not alone. For centuries, humans have grappled with this insidious struggle we call worry. And decades ago, a man named Dale Carnegie dedicated himself to finding practical ways to conquer it, transforming countless lives in the process. He wasn't just a theorist. He learned from people who faced immense pressure and found real workable solutions. In this video, we're diving deep into the core messages from Carnegie's timeless wisdom, uncovering powerful strategies that are as relevant now as they were when he first shared them. We'll break down practical techniques to dismantle anxiety, shift your perspective, and regain control over your peace of mind. Make sure to stick around until the very end, because while every piece of advice builds on the last, the most impactful takeaways often culminate as we wrap things up. If you're ready to stop feeling trapped by worry and start living more fully, hit that like button to let us know, and subscribe so you don't miss out on more insights like these. Let's begin this journey together. The uselessness of worry. Let's begin by truly grasping a fundamental yet often ignored truth about worry. It is profoundly, utterly useless. In fact, it's worse than useless. It's actively harmful. We spend countless hours, days, and even years of our lives caught in the grip of worry, our minds spinning with anxieties about potential misfortunes, past mistakes, and present difficulties. We believe on some subconscious level that by worrying intensely enough, we are somehow addressing the problem, that our mental anguish is a form of preparation or problem solving. But this is a dangerous delusion. Worry accomplishes absolutely nothing productive. Consider the nature of worry itself. It is a state characterized by dwelling on negative possibilities without taking constructive action. It is repetitive, circular thinking that focuses on what could go wrong, amplifying fears and uncertainties. When we worry, our minds are not engaged in analyzing the situation logically or devising a plan of action. Instead, they are trapped in an emotional loop, replaying worst-case scenarios and feeling overwhelmed by a sense of impending doom. This mental state is the polar opposite of the calm, clear thinking required to actually solve problems. Imagine you are facing a difficult situation at work, perhaps a looming deadline or a challenging project. If you fall into the trap of worrying, your thoughts might race. What if I don't finish on time? What if I mess up? My boss will be angry, I might lose my job. These thoughts generate fear and anxiety, manifesting physically as tension, restlessness, or even sleeplessness. While you're caught in this cycle of worry, are you actually working on the project? Are you breaking it down into manageable steps? Are you seeking help or resources? Probably not effectively. Your energy is consumed by the worry itself, leaving you paralyzed and unable to focus on the task at hand. The problem remains unsolved, and your anxiety only increases. Think about the analogy of the rocking chair. You are in motion, expending energy, but you're not moving forward. You are not changing your position or progressing towards a goal. Worry is the same. You are expending tremendous mental and emotional energy, generating heat and friction, but you are not advancing towards a solution. You are merely oscillating within the confines of your fear. Psychologically, chronic worry can have debilitating effects. It can impair concentration, memory, and decision-making abilities. It elevates stress hormones, which can have negative impacts on physical health over time, contributing to issues like headaches, digestive problems, and weakened immune systems. It steals our joy and prevents us from appreciating the present moment. It isolates us as we become consumed by our internal turmoil and less able to connect with others. Carnegie understood this intuitively and through observation. He saw that the individuals who succeeded in navigating difficult circumstances were not the ones who worried the most, but the ones who focused their energy on understanding the problem and taking deliberate steps to address it. They recognized that worry was a drain, a liability, not an asset. The key insight here is to distinguish between productive concern and unproductive worry. Productive concern involves acknowledging a potential problem, analyzing it logically, and planning a course of action. It is focused, time-limited, and leads to action. Unproductive worry, on the other hand, is diffuse, persistent, and paralyzing. It focuses on the fear itself rather than the problem, and it prevents action. Recognizing the sheer uselessness of worry is the crucial first step in overcoming it. It's like acknowledging that repeatedly hitting your head against a wall won't open a door, it will only cause pain. Once we truly internalize that worry is a counterproductive behavior that only makes things worse, we can begin to look for alternative ways to respond to challenges and uncertainties. We can start redirecting that wasted energy towards constructive thought and decisive action, the true engines of problem solving and progress. This fundamental understanding provides the motivation to explore and implement the powerful techniques that Carnegie and those he learned from discovered are effective in breaking free from the grip of corrosive worry. Galen Litchfield's method for analyzing worry. One of the most powerful techniques Carnegie highlighted for tackling immediate, overwhelming worry comes from the experience of Galen Litchfield. His story, set against the dramatic backdrop of occupied Shanghai in 1942, provides a vivid illustration of how to confront intense fear and find a path forward through structured analysis rather than succumbing to panic. Litchfield was managing an Asian insurance company when the Japanese army invaded China. One day, an admiral walked into his office and at gunpoint demanded that Litchfield liquidate the company's assets and hand them over. In that moment of extreme duress, Litchfield did as he was told, or at least he appeared to. He proceeded to liquidate most of the company's assets. However, he made a crucial and incredibly risky decision. He held back a large block of securities belonging to the company's Hong Kong branch, worth $750,000, a substantial fortune at the time. Days later, the Japanese admiral discovered Litchfield's defiance. When news reached Litchfield, he was understandably paralyzed with fear. He knew the Japanese military's reputation and the harsh consequences for disobedience. His immediate thought and the source of his overwhelming worry was the terrifying prospect of being thrown into the Bridge House, a notorious torture chamber feared by all who knew of it. In that moment of existential dread, facing what seemed like an almost certain grim fate, Litchfield could have easily spiraled into despair, allowing fear to completely consume him. He could have hidden, panicked, or simply given up. But instead, he did something remarkable. He collected himself and turned to a method he had developed for dealing with difficult situations. Despite the extreme circumstances, he went to his typewriter and deliberately began to analyze his worry using a specific two-step process. This wasn't a passive surrender to fear. It was an active, intellectual engagement with the problem designed to cut through the emotional fog. The first step in Litchfield's method was to clearly define the worry. In the throes of intense anxiety, our worries often feel nebulous, a shapeless mass of fear that is hard to grasp. By forcing himself to articulate his fear precisely, Litchfield brought it into the light. He typed out the question, "What am I worried about?" The answer, though terrifying, was specific. "I am afraid I will be thrown into the Bridge House tomorrow morning." Putting this fear into words, seeing it written down, immediately made it feel slightly less overwhelming, less like an abstract terror and more like a concrete problem, albeit a potentially deadly one, that could potentially be analyzed. This act of defining the worry is crucial. It transforms a swirling, undefined anxiety into a specific challenge. It moves the worry from the chaotic realm of pure emotion into the more structured domain of thought. It's like trying to fight a ghost versus fighting a tangible opponent. While the opponent might be formidable, you can at least see it and potentially strategize against it. Vague worries have immense power over us because they can be anything and everything. Specific worries, while frightening, are limited and thus more manageable. The second step, and the one that begins to pave the way for action, was to explore potential solutions. Litchfield typed out the second question: "What can I do about it?" This question immediately shifts the focus from the problem itself to the realm of possibility and agency. It prompts the mind to move out of passive dread and into active consideration of responses. He then spent the next few hours under immense pressure, thinking deliberately and writing down different courses of action he could potentially take. no matter how slim the chance of success might seem. He forced himself to consider multiple options, even those that seemed unlikely to work. This wasn't about finding the perfect solution immediately, but about generating possibilities, about exploring the landscape of his choices. This process of brainstorming under pressure is incredibly difficult when consumed by worry, but by following his structured method, Litchfield was able to impose order on his racing thoughts and begin to evaluate his situation more rationally. His method wasn't just about identifying the worry, it was about immediately pivoting to what could be done, forcing the mind into a problem-solving mode. The two core questions to dispel worry. Let's delve deeper into the profound simplicity and power of those two questions that Galen Litchfield used in his moment of extreme crisis, and which Dale Carnegie championed as a fundamental technique for managing worry. The questions are, what am I worried about and what can I do about it? While they seem straightforward, their effectiveness lies in the deliberate process of writing down the answers. This isn't just thinking about the questions, it's about committing your thoughts to paper or a screen, making them tangible and external to your swirling internal state. Step 1. What am I worried about? Might seem obvious, but articulating your worry in precise detail is a critical first move. Often when we're anxious, our worry is a tangled ball of different fears, uncertainties, and potential negative outcomes. It feels overwhelming because it lacks definition. Writing it down forces you to untangle the ball. You have to identify the specific fear at the core. Is it losing your job? Is it failing an exam? Is it someone's reaction? Is it a health concern? Be as specific as possible. Instead of "I'm worried about work," write "I'm worried about completing the XYZ report by Friday's deadline and failing to meet expectations." This precision is like shining a spotlight on the monster under the bed. It might still look scary, but at least you know exactly what you're dealing with. When Litchfield wrote down, "I am afraid I will be thrown into the bridge house tomorrow morning," he wasn't just stating a general fear of harm. He was stating the specific, immediate threat he perceived. This specificity does several things. First, it makes the worry finite. It gives it boundaries. Second, it allows you to see if the worry is based on concrete facts or hypothetical anxieties. Third, it creates a psychological distance between you and the worry. It's no longer an overwhelming feeling that is you. It's a statement about a potential future event that you can analyze. The act of writing itself is transformative. It slows down your racing thoughts. It engages a different part of your brain than simply thinking. It externalizes the worry, placing it outside of your head where you can look at it more objectively. It's like creating a case file for your worry. You are the investigator examining the evidence rather than being the terrified victim lost in the dark. For many people, simply writing down their worries, seeing them articulated on paper, can immediately reduce their intensity. It takes away some of their power because they are no longer vague, looming threats, but defined points of concern. Step 2. What can I do about it? Is where the magic really starts to happen. This question redirects your mental energy from passive suffering to active problem solving. It's a deliberate shift in focus. Once you have defined the worry, you immediately pivot to potential responses. This isn't about dwelling on the problem, it's about exploring solutions. The instruction is to write down at least 3 courses of action. This encourages brainstorming and creativity, even if some options seem far-fetched or undesirable. Litchfield, in his dire situation, thought of options like explaining himself to the Admiral, unlikely to work due to language barriers and the Admiral's likely frustration, trying to run away, risky and likely to fail, staying home and hoping the Admiral would forget, improbable and suspicious, or going to the office and acting normally, a gamble but perhaps the least provocative option. He didn't just think of the obvious or easy solutions, he explored a range of possibilities, evaluating their potential outcomes. Writing down these options is as important as writing down the worry. It creates a visual map of your choices. It allows you to see the different paths forward and compare them side by side. This visual comparison facilitates objective analysis, which is almost impossible when options are just swirling around in your head mixed with fear. Seeing them listed helps you evaluate the pros and cons of each course of action without the immediate, overwhelming emotion attached to them. This two-step process, defining the worry and listing potential actions, is incredibly powerful because it imposes structure on chaos. Worry thrives in vagueness and inaction. By making the worry specific and forcing yourself to consider actions, you dismantle its primary tools. You move from feeling helpless to feeling capable of making a choice, even if none of the choices are ideal. This sense of agency, of having options, is a powerful counteragent to the paralysis of worry. It allows you to regain a sense of control, not over the external circumstances, but over your response to them. It shifts your mindset from, "What if something terrible happens?" to, "If something terrible happens, what can I do?" Objective evaluation of options. Once the initial storm of raw emotion has been somewhat tempered by the process of writing down the specific worry and listing potential courses of action, the next critical step is the objective evaluation of these options. This is where rationality begins to take precedence over fear. With your worry defined and your potential responses laid out before you, either on paper or in a document, you can begin to analyze them from a more detached perspective. This is significantly easier now that the problem and potential solutions are externalized, rather than swirling internally amidst panic. Looking at the list of options, the goal is to assess the probability of a positive outcome for each. This isn't about wishing or hoping, it's about realistic assessment based on the information available to you. For Litchfield, facing the Japanese, Admiral, this meant considering the likely reactions to each of his potential actions. Would explaining himself work, given the language barrier and the Admiral's presumed anger? Probably not well. Would running away succeed, or would it merely delay the inevitable and potentially worsen his situation? Most likely the latter. Would hiding at home make the problem disappear, or would it raise suspicion? The latter seemed more probable. Going to the office and acting as if nothing had happened seemed audacious, but perhaps, just perhaps, it offered a slim chance that the Admiral would be preoccupied with larger matters of the occupation and might overlook or defer dealing with. Litchfield. Evaluating objectively requires stepping back from your immediate emotional reaction to each option. An option that seems terrifying might, upon objective analysis, have a higher probability of success than a seemingly safer but ultimately ineffective course of action. Conversely, an option that feels comfortable because it avoids immediate confrontation might simply be delaying an inevitable and potentially worse outcome. This stage is about weighing the potential consequences of each choice. What are the risks associated with each action? What are the potential benefits? What resources or support would be needed for each option? What are the likely reactions of others involved? By systematically considering these factors for each listed course of action, you move from a state of fearful uncertainty to a state of informed possibility. Carnegie emphasized that once you have objectively analyzed your options and evaluated their likely outcomes, you must make a decision. This is a crucial point. Analysis without decision-making is still a form of paralysis. You can analyze endlessly, weighing the pros and cons of each option, but until you commit to a path, you remain stuck in the limbo of worry. The analysis serves the purpose of making the decision clearer, not of eliminating the need for it. Litchfield, after carefully considering his options, recognized that while going to the office and acting normally was a significant gamble, it had, in his objective assessment, the highest probability of a positive outcome compared to the other. Highly risky alternatives. Running or hiding seemed almost guaranteed to lead to capture and punishment. Trying to explain himself seemed likely to fail due to the communication barrier and escalate the situation. Therefore, the audacious gamble of facing the situation directly, while terrifying, appeared to offer the best chance of navigating the crisis successfully. Making a decision based on this objective evaluation is a powerful act. It channels the energy that was previously consumed by worry into a focused direction. It transforms fear into resolve. It allows you to move from a state of passive victimhood to one of active engagement with your circumstances. Even if the decision is difficult, the act of deciding itself is liberating. It marks the transition from being buffeted by the waves of worry to steering your ship, even through stormy seas. This is where the process of analyzing worry culminates in the vital step towards taking action, which is the ultimate antidote to the paralyzing effect of fear. Action as an antidote to worry. After the crucial steps of defining your worry and objectively evaluating potential courses of action, the next and arguably most vital step is taking action. This is where the abstract process of analysis translates into tangible engagement with the problem. As Dale Carnegie emphasized, experience shows that a significant portion of worry vanishes once a clear decision is made, and an even larger portion disappears once you actually start to carry out that decision. Action is the powerful antidote to the paralysis that worry often induces. Worry thrives in inaction and uncertainty. It keeps us spinning our wheels mentally, but prevents us from moving forward physically or practically. It's like being stuck in mud. The more you spin your tires, the deeper you sink. Taking action, however small, breaks this cycle. It shifts your focus from the fearful possibilities in your mind to the concrete steps you are taking in the real world. Consider Litchfield's situation again. After analyzing his options, he decided to go to the office the next morning and act as if nothing untoward had happened. This was not a passive decision. It required immense courage and deliberate action. He had to physically go to the building, walk into his office and interact with people, including the potential for encountering the very admiral he feared. The act of getting dressed, leaving his home, traveling to the office, and walking through the door was the physical manifestation of his decision. Carnegie quotes Litchfield as saying that 50% of his worries vanished once he arrived at a clear decision, and another 40% usually vanished once he started to carry out that decision. This highlights the profound impact of action. Making the decision addresses the uncertainty of which path to take. Taking the first steps down that chosen path addresses the fear of the unknown consequences and replaces it with the reality of engagement. When you are worried about a task, like writing a difficult report, the worry itself can prevent you from starting. You think about how hard it will be, how long it will take, whether you'll do a good job. This leads to procrastination, which in turn increases the worry. However, if you decide to start, even if it's just writing the first sentence or outlining the main points, the act of starting breaks the cycle. You are no longer just worrying about the report. You are working on the report. The fear begins to recede as your focus shifts to the process of doing. Even if the decision you make isn't the absolute perfect solution, and often in complex situations, there is no single perfect solution, taking action is still beneficial. Carnegie suggested that if the decision feels too difficult, simply proceed with any good option for 5 minutes. This is a brilliant piece of practical advice. It bypasses the need for absolute certainty before acting. It recognizes that often, momentum is more important than initial perfection. By committing to just 5 minutes of action on a chosen path, you can gauge whether it feels right. If it does, continue. If not, you haven't invested a huge amount of time and can switch to your next best option. The key is to initiate movement. The more action you take, the more your worry will fade away. This is because action builds momentum, generates tangible results, even if they are just small steps, and replaces the passive state of worrying with the active state of doing. It gives you a sense of control and progress, which directly counteracts the feelings of helplessness and paralysis that fuel worry. Action also provides feedback from the real world. You learn whether your chosen course of action is working, whether adjustments are needed, or whether a different approach is required. This real-world feedback is infinitely more useful than the endless hypothetical scenarios generated by worry. It allows for adaptation and learning, moving you closer to a resolution. Ultimately, action is the bridge between analyzing a problem and overcoming it. You can analyze and plan all day, but without taking the crucial step of implementation, the worry will persist, tethering you to the problem. By deciding and acting, you engage with the problem directly, harnessing your energy for constructive effort instead of allowing it to be dissipated by unproductive anxiety. This is the powerful culmination of the process of analyzing worry. transforming fear into forward movement. The importance of accepting the worst-case scenario. While analyzing a worry and taking action can address the immediate problem, Dale Carnegie presented another powerful technique for dealing with the lingering anxiety that can persist even after action is taken, or for situations where the outcome is largely outside of your control. This technique, inspired by the experience of figures like Willis Carrier, is about confronting and mentally accepting the worst possible outcome. It sounds counterintuitive. Why would you focus on the worst thing that could happen? But, paradoxically, this process can be incredibly liberating and a potent antidote to worry. Willis Carrier, the pioneering engineer who invented the first electric air conditioning unit and founded the Carrier Corporation, provides a compelling example. Early in his career, he was working on a project installing equipment at gas plants when things started to go terribly wrong. The equipment wasn't performing as expected, and the project was on the verge of failing. Carrier was consumed with worry. He feared not only the financial loss to his company, but also the damage to his reputation and the potential loss of his job. This worry was debilitating, making it hard for him to think clearly and find a solution. In this state of intense anxiety, Carrier did something deliberate. He didn't try to suppress his fear or pretend everything was okay. Instead, he consciously forced himself to face the worst possible outcome of the project failing. He imagined the day after the failure, his reputation tarnished, his job lost, facing unemployment. He didn't just fleetingly consider it, he allowed himself to vividly imagine this grim reality. This act of confronting and mentally accepting the worst was the turning point. As he grappled with the potential consequences, he realized something fundamental. Even in that worst-case scenario, jobless, reputation damaged, he would still be alive. He knew he had skills and experience. He knew that if he worked hard, he could likely find a new job and eventually get back on his feet. The worst-case scenario, while painful and difficult, was not the end of the world. It was survivable. This realization had a profound effect. By accepting the worst that could happen, the intense grip of worry began to loosen. The vague, terrifying possibility of failure was replaced by a defined, albeit undesirable, outcome. The fear of the unknown was replaced by the acceptance of a difficult but manageable reality. This mental acceptance acted like an anchor, grounding him in reality instead of being tossed about by the stormy seas of hypothetical fears. Carnegie explained that accepting the worst yanks us out of the great gray clouds in which we fumble around when we are blind by worry, and it plants our feet good and solid on the earth. Worry keeps us suspended in a state of anxious possibility, where the fear is magnified by its ill-defined nature. Accepting the worst brings us down to earth, to a concrete reality, even if that reality is unpleasant. It removes the terrifying power of the unknown. The paradox is that once you have mentally accepted the worst, you often find yourself in a much stronger position to deal with the situation constructively. When Carrier accepted that losing his job was a possibility he could survive, the debilitating fear lifted. His mind, no longer consumed by panic, was free to think clearly again. It was after he had accepted the worst that he was able to calmly analyze the engineering problem and see a potential solution. Adding additional equipment to the project might achieve the desired result for the client. This ability to think clearly after accepting the worst is a key benefit. Worry scatters our thoughts, making it impossible to concentrate effectively on the problem itself. It directs our mental energy towards the fear rather than towards finding solutions. By accepting the worst, you disarm the fear. The what if is answered, albeit negatively, and the mind can then focus its energy on the now what. The act of accepting the worst is not about giving up or being pessimistic. It's a strategic mental maneuver. It's about confronting your deepest fears head-on, processing the emotions associated with them, and realizing that even the most dreaded outcome is likely something you can endure and eventually recover from. Once you have made peace with the worst possibility, the fear of it loses much of its power. You are no longer fighting against a terrifying ghost, but dealing with a difficult but survivable situation. This newfound mental freedom allows you to approach the problem with a clearer head, greater resilience, and a renewed capacity for finding constructive solutions, just as Willis Carrier did, turning a potential $20,000 loss into a $15,000 profit. How acceptance frees up concentration. One of the most insidious consequences of chronic worry is its devastating impact on our ability to concentrate. When our minds are filled with anxious thoughts, it's incredibly difficult to focus on the task at hand, to absorb new information, or to think creatively and analytically. Worry fragments our attention, pulling it in countless directions at once, to past mistakes, future fears, potential problems, and hypothetical disasters. This mental scattering leaves us feeling overwhelmed, inefficient, and less capable of dealing with the very issues that are causing our worry. Dale Carnegie understood this connection between worry and concentration intimately. He saw it in his students struggling to focus during public speaking exercises, their minds elsewhere, consumed by fear of judgment or failure. He quotes Willis Carrier, who pointed out that one of the worst features about worrying is that it destroys our ability to concentrate. Carrier observed that when we worry, our mind jumps here and there and everywhere, and we lose all power of decision. This is a perfect description of the mental state induced by anxiety, a chaotic, unfocused internal environment where productive thought is nearly impossible. Imagine trying to read a complex book while a dozen different internal voices are shouting, "Tout your fears and anxieties." It would be incredibly difficult to absorb the information, to follow the arguments, or to think critically about the content. Your attention would constantly be pulled away by the internal noise. This is what worry does to our mental landscape when we are trying to work, learn, or solve a problem. However, as Willis Carrier discovered and as Carnegie emphasized, when we consciously force ourselves to face the worst possible outcome and accept it mentally, something remarkable happens to our ability to concentrate. By accepting the worst, we eliminate all those vague imaginings and put ourselves in position in which we are able to concentrate on our problem. Why does this happen? Worry thrives on ambiguity and the fearful possibilities of the future. It keeps our minds in a state of constant "what if?" By defining and accepting the worst-case scenario, you answer the ultimate "what if?" You confront the most feared possibility and say, in effect, "Okay, this is the worst and I can deal with that." This act removes the power of the unknown. The monster under the bed has been identified. It's still undesirable, but it's no longer an infinite source of undefined terror. With the primary source of ambiguity and fear addressed, the mind is no longer compelled to constantly run through endless negative permutations of the future. The energy that was being dissipated by the constant "what if" cycle is now freed up. It can be redirected, it can be focused. The mental fog begins to lift, allowing for clearer thinking. When Carrier accepted the possibility of losing his job and reputation, the intense, debilitating fear that was scattering his thoughts subsided. His mind was no longer consumed by the panic of potential failure. Instead, having accepted the worst reality, his mind could then shift its focus to the actual problem at hand, the malfunctioning equipment, and how to fix it. He was able to analyze the technical issues objectively, free from the emotional burden of intense worry. This allowed him to see the potential solution that had been obscured by his anxiety, adding the extra equipment. The act of accepting the worst effectively grounds you in the present reality, even if that reality is a potential one you are preparing for, and liberates your mental energy. It's like clearing the clutter from a desk, so you can finally see the task you need to work on. Once the clutter of vague fears and endless negative possibilities is removed, your mind can settle and focus its full power on the problem that needs solving. Therefore, if you find your concentration is being sabotaged by worry, deliberately employing the technique of facing and accepting the worst-case scenario can be incredibly effective. It's not about giving up. It's about gaining control over your internal state. By confronting and accepting your deepest fears, you take away their power to distract and paralyze you, freeing your mind to focus its energy where it is most needed, on understanding the situation and finding constructive ways to move forward. This newfound ability to concentrate, unburdened by the weight of debilitating worry, is a powerful tool for problem-solving and effective action. We've journeyed together through the powerful insights of Dale Carnegie, uncovering timeless strategies for tackling that pervasive challenge we call worry. From learning to analyze our fears with clarity, to finding surprising strength in accepting the worst, and discovering the liberating power of focusing our energy on the only moment that truly exists, right now, we've seen that breaking free from worry isn't just a pipe dream. It's a skill, a discipline built day by day, compartment by compartment. These aren't abstract theories. They are practical tools forged in the real-life experiences of people who chose to confront their anxieties head-on and emerge stronger. Now the real work begins. Having these insights is the first step, but the transformation happens when you put them into practice. Choose one technique today, maybe writing down a worry and listing actions, or simply committing to live fully. In this present hour, see the difference it makes. The path to stopping worry and truly starting to live is before you. If this video resonated with you and you feel ready to take on worry, please give it a like. Share your thoughts or the technique you'll try first in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else. And remember to subscribe for more tools and inspiration to build your best life. Thank you for watching. Now go forth and live, unburdened and fully present.